I don't have the time to win this because there's a lot of people that got time on their hands that can make like 50 beats a day, and I'm on the verge of graduating. So it's like I'm not worried about winning the keyboard, but what I am gonna try to do is get his attention with this. And so I'm not trying to win the battle, I'm trying to win the war type of thing. And I was like, if I can get his attention with this, then maybe, him and I can start working together and build a relationship.
All right, so today on the podcast, we got my guy Realistic. What's up, man? How are you?
What's up, man? How are you doing? Glad to be here, man. Always appreciate the gems that you got on Instagram and everything too, man. So I've been following for quite a while.
Thanks, man. And I'm same goes for you. I know, we were just chatting for a minute before this, but before that, we'd actually never had like a one-on-one conversation. I've been following you for a long time. We're in, some of the same groups. We're in, that mastermind group, and we've definitely been on, some group calls and whatever. But yeah, man, it's good to actually connect one-on-one.
I think we've been on some clubhouses together too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Bro, I was so on Clubhouse like a couple months ago. I was all about it. And I don't know what happened. It's not I still really like it when I go on it, but I just kind of maybe it's just one of those things where it's like the shiny new object, so I was so into it. Are you on there pretty regularly?
Not anymore. I was at first, I was super pumped about it, but I don't know. I think for me, what had happened was, because the way to grow your following on Clubhouse is to offer value. So I feel after a while, you got too many people that are trying to offer value when they don't have good value to offer, and they're doing it more in the sense to try to get followers. And so it started to become where there was a lot of bad advice on there. And you and I've been doing this for a long time, so we can tell right away when it's BS or someone doesn't really know. But for the people out there that are just starting out, they're willing to, eat whatever you're feeding them at the time, because they're like, oh, okay, this person seems confident about it. Okay, maybe I'll do that. So after a while, I kind of backed off from that, but I was really excited at first because I felt like Oracle and I could have did some really cool things, and we probably still will, but that's the big reason why I backed off.
Yeah, no, I got to get back on there. I think you're right for sure. Like, man, there's so much information, and especially something like that where it's like the format of it is like, okay, bring the gems, bring the value. Like that's what I like about it. Is like that's how it's set up, but it also means that that's what everybody's trying to do, and not everybody's in a position where maybe they're ready to do it, but maybe they think they are, or they're just going to try because they think it's the thing to do or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. But that happens with every platform. We saw it with Instagram and YouTube for sure. But I feel like that one, just because it really was about giving gems, that one kind of got a little bit more in a dangerous territory as far as, who's doing what. Because Instagram, you could post, whatever and get likes and stuff. You don't necessarily have to post gems and stuff.
Yeah, 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 I'm gonna get back on there, but yeah, I think it's a good word of warning. Is definitely make sure you know who you're taking advice from, and but the thing that I do like about it is it's like you have to bring the value. Like for me, like on Instagram, for example. So like Richard is like on my team. He does a million things, but one of the things he does, he's like head of content. So a lot of times the content, honestly, that's going on Instagram, I have very little, sometimes nothing to do with, right? A lot of times it is from stuff that I've said or it's a clip or whatever, but not always. And so you can kind of fake it, you know what I mean? But when you're on Clubhouse and you're just talking, it's like you either have something valuable to say or you don't. So I kind of like that. It's like the stakes are high. Like I always, I'm like, all right, if I'm about to be up here, I'm about to be on stage, like let me bring it, because there's no faking it. I can't edit it or, put it together later.
No rewind or anything. And I definitely get what you're saying, because Oracle, he doesn't, he's on Instagram and stuff, but he doesn't. I do all his posting and his scheduling. I find a lot of the content. I, take pieces from his podcasts and piece it together, and find all the little quotes and stuff that we post in the morning and all the tips and stuff. So he's not like as active on Instagram as, kind of like in your same realm with that. But on Clubhouse, he would have to be more active because it's him actively speaking. I can't speak for him.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess just to back up a little bit. So what I think a lot of our audience is familiar with Sound Oracle, maybe not 100%, but most of them are. We had them on the podcast recently and we've worked with them a lot. Maybe what's kind of like, first could you maybe give like the 10-second version of him, because I think people mostly know, and then maybe just like a quick kind of like how I guess how you guys met, but honestly, I'm more interested in like what your role is and kind of like how you work together and what that's like.
Yeah, I think I can wrap it all in one thing too. So
Cool.
for those who don't know, Oracle is a producer and sound designer. He was a sound designer for Timberland and Polo the Don, but he's also produced for everybody. I mean, I'm talking Drake, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, Drake, 50 Cent, Gucci Mane. It's a long list. But thing that he's got the most that he's most known for is his sound designing that he did for Timberland, like what he did on Jay-Z's Magna Carta and JT's Justin Timberlake's 2020 album. And then also obviously all the sound design that he did for Polo the Don. So then how him and I started to get to know each other is, Timberland was one of my favorite producers growing up. And, when it comes to Timberland, one thing about him is he has a really distinct sound. So I'm like, well, I mean, where do you get his sounds? Like, what kind of sounds? So I had eventually ran into finding out that Sound Oracle is his sound designer, had followed him for a year. And, I was downloading his drum kits and stuff, because that's another thing Sound Oracle does is he makes drum samples and loop packs that you can buy right on his website, soundoracle.net. And a lot of these get picked up and hit records and stuff too. So, and a lot of these were actually used in, Suit and Tie by JT and Tom Ford and that. So what I would do was I would use his sounds in my videos, right? And everybody does that. They get the iPhone going and moving around on the drum machine. But what I wanted to do was try to think of something that could make me stand out. And I think this is important too when people are out there trying to get noticed and really kind of find their own lane on Instagram. So what I had did was, I had my drum machine and I would make the beat. Well, what I would do is I would bring in a friend that played saxophone and I would have them stand next to me, or violin, or like ukulele or whatever, like some like cool instrument. I found this I had a friend of mine that had played this Native American flute. It was a triple flute, so there was three flutes coming out of it, and it looked really unique.
Whoa.
So I did a video where I'm just playing a beat while he's going to town on the flute. And so I would post those videos and I would tag him like, yo, like I'm using Sound Oracle sounds. And his assistant eventually was like, hey, I think you should check this guy out. He's doing some cool stuff with your sounds. And so then he reached out to me and said, hey, man, I really like what you're doing with the sounds. Do you got time for a quick phone call? And then, he was like, whatever you're doing with those musicians, can you do that for me? Can you record them? And then, we'll put those into loop packs and stuff. And so it started with that. And then,
So let
there
me my bad, just to stop you for a second, because that's super dope. So did you have that end in mind when you were doing that? Like, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Sound Oracle. I want to work with this guy. Here's one way to do it, or is it more like this is somebody whose drum sounds and all that kind of stuff I love, and I'm just gonna do something cool with it? Was it strategic in that way, or?
it was strategic. And it's funny that you asked that, because 1 week before he reached out to me, I remember I was on a walk with my girlfriend, and he was doing a contest of, use our new sound pack and post a video of it, and whoever makes the most videos wins, and they would win a little MPK mini keyboard. And at the time, I was in college for audio engineering. I was about to graduate, and I was on a walk with my girlfriend, and I told her what I was doing. I was like, I don't have the time to win this, because there's a lot of people that got time in their hands that can make like 50 beats a day, and I'm on the verge of graduating. So it's like, I'm not worried about winning the keyboard, but what I am going to try to do is get his attention with this. And so I'm not trying to win the battle, I'm trying to win the war type of thing. And I was like, if I can get his attention with this, then maybe, him and I can start working together and build a relationship. And literally 1 week later, I got that DM in my Instagram, and my life literally changed from there. Because I was on the verge of graduating. I was like, man, I got this expensive degree in music. What am I going to do with my life? How am I going to make money? had a job lined up at Guitar Center, but who wants to work there? And this eventually led to me working full time. And I promise there's gonna be gems packed into this origin story.
Bro, there's already just that gem right there as far as like people I think a lot of times are wondering, well, how can I work with Sound Oracle, somebody who's worked with Jay-Z and Beyonce and Migos and Timbaland, whatever. He's about as up there as you can get. And I think sometimes the thought is, I don't know, I DM them. Maybe I need to know somebody. So I think that that's a huge gem right there. Is how can you do something that, first of all, creates value for him, right? Because that creates, if nothing else, that's some dope content that he can repost that then helps him sell more drum kits. It's also something that's unique and makes you stand out because it's something that's a little different than he's probably seeing over and over. So that I think is a big gem if you're trying to get a hold of somebody, whether if it's to potentially work with them, to have them be an affiliate partner, to produce for them, whatever it might be, is how can you bring value in a way that's unique. So big gem right there.
Yeah, and like you said, bringing value, and that's always the thing I say when people wonder how can they work with people like this or people that are successful. Like, if you wanted to work under Jetson Made or something, you gotta do one of three things, if not all of them. You have to find a way to save them time, or find a way to save them money, or find a way to make them money. And if you can do one, or if in my case I was able to eventually do all three for him, then you're going to bring value. And the more and more that you can do that, the more that they're going to keep you around. And it's a lot of things too, where like we had talked about uh briefly in the beginning, is if you're going to work under Timberland or Jetson Made or Metro, or like anybody like uh Jermaine Dupri, don't go into the mindset of thinking like, oh, like I'm gonna make these beats, man. I'm dope, and I'm gonna just make beats for Timberland. Timberland's one of the greatest to ever do it. Like, why does he need you to make beats for him, right? Like, he's one of the best ever. He's got that, but maybe there's other things that he needs help with, like running his social media, or you know, there might be some accounting stuff, or creating micro content off of his macro content. And it's something that always stuck with me, that Gary Vee had said of when you're first starting out, work underneath somebody that's doing what you're trying to do, or at least similar, and learn under that. And that's really what I've been doing for the past few years. So
That's
in
huge, bro. And I know I keep stopping you and you're trying to go through your story, but it's so important. So first of all, I feel like people say give value so much that to some extent it like loses meaning, and they're like, yeah, give value. I don't know what that means. But I love that definition: save them time, save them money, and or make them money. Like that's like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I know what I need to do. I still need to be creative and figure out what it is specifically, but if it's not doing one of those three things, then that's you're probably not giving value.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're in there cooking up beats, you're probably not saving them time, and you're not saving them money. Right? But if
Right, right.
and you just did a whole bunch of spreadsheets for them and figured out their whole calendar, you just saved them a bunch of time, right? And they're like, wow, that's valuable. And that leads me to how I was able to work for him full time. Is in the beginning, we had a work for hire contract, and it said right in there that this is a one-time thing. You're just going to record some loops, and it's not a job after that. Well, what I was doing was I was trying to like stay in this realm. Like, he's a big deal. I don't want to just make this a one-time thing. So what I would always do is every time I would do something for him, like record some violins or something, I'd always do like one extra thing that he didn't ask for, but I felt like could be useful. For instance, when I recorded the vocal loops for him, what I did was I had my girlfriend record me doing a tutorial of how I recorded the vocals. We use this EQ, we use this compressor, we did it in this order. I had the mic from this distance, and I sent it to him, and I said, hey, would this be useful content? And he was like, bro, I've been trying to figure out how to do tutorials all the time. And he was like, is there any chance that you could do this on the regular? And I was like, yes, because that's why I sent this to you, because I want to do this on the regular for you. And so I would always do that. I would always just go one little extra step, like, here's something else that I could do for you, or I could do this. And then eventually he had reached out and said, hey, can you be my full-time engineer? And so then I became his full-time engineer of making mixing all his kits and mixing all his sounds. And other things. And eventually it led to, as he was doing his podcast. I mean, this is years after we're already friends. We've already talked a bunch, and I'm still trying to offer value. So eventually I had just took the liberty. I didn't ask him or anything. I just took his podcast off of YouTube and I chopped it up into small clips. And I said, hey, would this be useful if you could post this on Instagram? And he's like, yes. And he's like, actually, let's figure out how we can do this more. And then that led me to get a promotion under him. So after I'd already been working with him full time, it led to me being able to get a promotion. So that's another thing to think about too, is after you've worked under somebody that's, has a lot of success, or somebody that's a big deal. Is, let's be honest, he is. um even 2 years into it, 3 years into it, not getting comfortable and still finding ways to give value so you can grow within that person's brand and stuff like that. And and also, in the way, I'm not going to lie, it did help my income getting that promotion, which
Sure.
is obviously one of the end goals and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of exactly how it led to me now being not only his engineer but his content creator as well. And it's always just that thing of, how can I offer value to this person? How can I save them time? And sometimes this person doesn't have time for you to ask them, hey, would it be useful if I made a tutorial? Maybe make a
Yes.
tutorial and then send it to them, be like, hey, what do you think of this? And they could be like, yo, that would be dope to post on the website. Dope. Now they have a visual and it's ready to go.
That part is so huge too, where there's like different levels, right? So I'll have people approach me that send a DM. They're like, "Hey, will you mentor me?" And it's like, no, basically no, because what value are you bringing? Like, yes, of course, there's ways that can happen, but if that's your question, basically no. But I'm gonna send you a link to go check out a training or something. It's fine. I'm not gonna be rude about it, but
And
um,
they are getting mentored.
yeah, and that is the process for it, but that's kind of one step. And then the next step is like, okay, I know I need to bring value. So sometimes I might get a DM that's, hey, I love what you're doing, blah blah blah. I'd really love to get mentored by you. Is there anything, I'm willing to work for free? Is there anything I can do for you? And it's saying, and you think like, oh yeah, that should be great. But no, just like what you said, is this, whoever you're reaching out to, they're I'm too busy to figure out, to now spend my day figuring out how to make you useful or whatever. It's like, no, just figure out, you do it, you do the research, figure out what's important to that person, how you can save them time, save them money, and or make them money, which I love. I'm going to use that forever now that you taught me that one. And then actually just do it, at least do it once, and just say, check it out, I did this, do you want this?
It's,
And then it's like, yeah, this is great, let's do this again. I think that's huge, Jim.
and you made a really good point there, that I didn't even think of, is it would take you time to and our whole thing is finding ways to save them time. Well, now if you ask, what can I do for you? Now you have to take the time to figure out, well, what could they do for me? Whereas if you figure it out and say, hey, would this be something that's interesting to you? Now you've saved them time, and they can be like, oh yeah, that would be dope, or no, that doesn't work for me.
Love it, love
Yeah.
it. So it's interesting, kind of that dynamic where obviously it's been a huge help, and a ton of value on both sides for you working with Sound Oracle. What's that balance for you, as far as what, are there certain things that you're doing on your own, that you're building on your own? I wonder that, because for me, I've got a pretty decent sized team now, but we're a startup. And so basically, most of the people on the team are essentially entrepreneurs. They're producers or engineers themselves, and a lot of them are building their own businesses as they're working on my business. So I'm curious for you what that's like. Is that a tough balance to figure out what's the priority, or how do you think about that?
Man, it's not so much a tough balance. It's just a lot, as a lot of sacrifice, right? So like, I don't get to do a lot of like social things because I mean, the stuff that I do for Oracle, it's a full-time job. So to fit in the other stuff as well, takes some time. Like last week, for instance, this wasn't related to Oracle at all, but I had mastered a record for Just Blaze, Talib Kweli, Pharaoh Monch, and Sky
Oh,
Zoo. And yeah, man, because a couple of those people are some of my heroes. And so and it was a last minute thing, and it always is whenever you get to work with like a big name. It's always like a last minute thing, and always super rushed and unorganized. But to find time into doing that because they reached out on Wednesday and the stuff needed to be out and released to the public on Friday already. And I'm not going to turn down a Just Blaze and Talib Kweli track. I'm just not going to. So it's just that thing of having to maybe not hang out as much, or the classic thing, maybe not watching TV or playing video games as much. But it definitely is a balance. And we talked about before, like I'd say about 75% of my work and income does come from working from Oracle, but I do have some other things going off on the side as well, that doesn't come from that. Like for instance, during Christmas I had did a record for Music Soul Child, an R&B legend. And that was, just kind of came off to the, so that actually came from my roommate, Amon Jackson. But just kind of again finding time for that because this was during Christmas. So what's going on Oracle's site? A Christmas sale. And it's one
Sure,
of his
sure.
biggest sales of the year, right? So that takes a lot of work and a lot of marketing and scheduling and planning. So just to kind of balance in, and sometimes, man, it's just really about, and this too, is like, how bad do you want it? Well, you're successful, and so you've had to really sacrifice and had to put in a lot longer hours. Like, sure, you might not want to do a 16-hour day sometimes, but to get at the level where you've been at, you've had to kind of go, you've had to do that a few times. And so sometimes you have to do that as well when I'm been balancing the two things, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And it's cool. It sounds like you're essentially, like, I've heard the term entrepreneur. I think I'm saying that right, which is essentially like you're being entrepreneurial within an organization. So
Yeah.
you're working at, Sound Oracle, but you are doing content. Taking content and repurposing it. You are creating tutorials. You are actually doing, mixing. You're doing right. You're doing all this different stuff. So you are essentially being entrepreneurial within that framework. So you get to kind of flex those muscles, which I assume is nice to do that different stuff.
Oh, that's a good point. I always forget that a lot of what I do is under the entrepreneur um umbrella. Like, cuz like you were saying, mixing, like I always, when people ask, well, what do you do? I'm a mix engineer and producer, content create, all this kind of stuff. I never, in my mind think about that. But yeah, in a sense, that is exactly what I'm doing. This is kind of important with it though, too, is even though I have these opportunities that are coming outside of them, what's important to know though is I had met AJ Amon Jackson, and this is where I work with a lot of these bigger names through Oracle. So even though it's not with them directly, working underneath him was still, in a sense, a result of this, because Oracle was my foot in the door of the music industry. Right? It's a tough industry to crack into, and it's not always easy. But once you get to know somebody, man, it's I don't know, man. They say it's who you know, right? And it really is, because once I got to know him, everything else started to open up. And some of my favorite people, that some of my heroes and stuff, are using my sounds and reposting them and stuff. And it's all, you know come from this. And so I think it's important for a lot of producers and stuff that are trying to get into it, is, again, maybe instead of doing the kind of the stuff that hasn't been working, find a way to work underneath a company or a person or a brand that's successful at what you want to do, learn from them, but do it in a way where you're not the necessarily person cooking up beats for them. You could still do it on the side, but again, just finding ways, because that's going to lead to other things. Like, yeah, I've never made a beat for Oracle, right? He makes his own beats, but that has led me to make beats for other people, and it's led me to be able to mix with other people and to be able to work with some of my heroes, even though I didn't work with him, make this stuff for him directly. Same thing with him is, when he had worked under Polo the Don and Timberland, he was making sound design. That was his role. But eventually it did lead to him to be able to produce a record for Lil Wayne, and did, a record for Gucci Mane, and all the, Drake. And so it led to that. So, even if you don't get to do what you initially wanted to do, it can still lead to it.
Yeah, no, that's huge. That I feel like that comes up literally every podcast, where it's everybody kind of starts out wanting to do one thing, and usually it's being a producer and getting placements,
Yeah.
and then it turns, and then that's like, okay, well, But in order to do that, I need to figure out this other little thing because it's either the next thing I need to do in my path, or what kind of the theme of this podcast is, because I'm going to take that shortcut of working with and for somebody who is at that level. But guess what? Like you said, he doesn't need you to make beats. He needs you to do all this other stuff. And that's
Yep.
what's going to create those opportunities. And I wanted to touch on something too. You mentioned it's who you know. And I think that that's so important. Like those relationships really are everything in so many different ways, whether if that's, in your business, finding strategic partners that are going to help drive you traffic, whether if that's, creating those opportunities because you know somebody who knows somebody. But sometimes I worry that people hear that phrase and it becomes an excuse. And it's like, well, if I just knew Sound Oracle, I'd be on. If I just knew Drake, I'd be on. But really it's, yes, it's who you know, but first it's what you know, right? Because like you could have just met Sound Oracle somewhere and just been some dude, and then you'd go on with your day and still wouldn't be anywhere. But because you were able to give all this value of creating this cool content, of helping him in, all these multiple different ways, you had those skills, you had that, drive to actually do it and put the energy in, and the experience of, however many years you put into mixing in your craft and all that kind of stuff. It's that combination of what you know so that you can offer that thing to who you know.
Yeah, because you still got to be ready for the for it. It's I know this guy's polarizing, but it reminds me of something Tom Brady said in a in a interview with, he started up as a backup quarterback, and starting quarterback got hurt, and they asked him about it, and he said, I always told myself that when I got the opportunity, I was going to be ready and I was going to be prepared for that opportunity. And that always stuck with me. So I had told myself, I don't know when the opportunity is going to happen, but when I do, I'm going to be ready for it so I don't mess it up, because, you never know if you get that again. And I was going to touch on something too, because you brought up like a really good point, man. So if it comes back, man, I'll touch on that, because it was actually, it really fit in with what you were saying.
Cool. I hate that happens to me. What I've started doing on these podcasts is I just have a little I have Evernote up, and so I'll try to take even if it's just a few words, just something to remind me, because otherwise we start going off this tangent and this tangent, and then I forget.
Yep.
So there's a little gem if you're if you're on a podcast and you're trying to remember stuff, have a notepad or something pulled up.
I definitely need to do that for sure.
Man, I think we're getting close to wrapping it up. Maybe we could just do a couple little quick fire things. One is, I know that a lot of what you're doing is tutorials and stuff. Maybe you could share a couple gems. Is there a plugin you're super excited about, or a tip for using a plugin, or I don't know, something like that we could share for producers?
Yeah, I mean, as far as plugins, man, the ones I've been using a lot lately is DJ Swivel has like like a lot of really dope like effect plugins, like really cool. Like he's got one called the Sauce, which is great for like vocal effects and stuff, and another one that I really love called Spread. It really does a great job of just spreading stuff out. As far the wideness and everything, but as far as like a gem, I've been really lately been trying to push, not so much to focus on the numbers, that what the settings that I'm dialing in or anything, but really encouraging people, like if you're a producer, focus on sound selection, right? Because when you look at the importance of song quality, mixing and mastering, believe it or not, it's pretty low on the list as far as the importance of the final quality. The beginning of the list is your sound selection, or if you're a singer, the performance, what mic you use, this and that, the quality, right? It's because, like, if you think about it, if we're cooking, right? Let's say that we're making a tomato soup. Well, if we start out with rotten ingredients like rotten tomatoes, a bad kick drum sample or this or that, it's going to be really hard to make that taste good, the same way it's going to make it hard to sound good. But if you start out with fresh tomatoes and this and that, then you got a lot better chance to make it taste good. And then at the end, your things like EQ and distortion and stuff, i.e., oregano, salt, pepper, then you're able to kind of spice and sweeten those up a little bit. Because let's think about this. Let's say you were to add too much salt to your tomato soup, like a bunch of salt, i.e., in the same realm, if you were to clip your vocals going into your interface and now they're all distorted. Well, we can't take that out. The same way where we can't take this salt out. Now we can do things to ease up on it. We could add more water, but now we're taking away the flavor, right? So something's going to be sacrificed. We've lowered the salt flavor, we've lowered this distortion, but we've lost some quality, we've lost some flavor. So I think sound selection is really important when you're producing, and always be conscious about that. And sometimes it also is in the realm of what's your end goal, that maybe this is a high quality kick drum, but is it going to work for your song? Because like always think about, the song Jungle by Drake, that has a really distinct kick drum. It's really powerful. That kick drum doesn't work in every sense, right? But if you want a kick drum that sounds like that, then you have to ask yourself, well, what needs to go, right? And in case of that, there wasn't a lot of sub frequencies going on in that track, because the dominant one was they really wanted that kick drum to work. And that was a conscious decision that those producers had made, was they were thinking about, if I do this, what's gonna, because for every action there's a reaction. So if I do this, then maybe I gotta do this, or this has to go, or this or that. So I think sound selection is always something that's like really important to focus on.
Yeah, man, I'm so glad you said that. I was actually just talking to Irko, who's super
Yeah.
dope engineer. He's in one of the the one of the same masterminds that we're in together, and we were kind of talking about this, and it came up also the same thing is sound selection. And I know for me as a producer, which honestly these days my focus has more been on kind of the marketing and business and delegating and running a team and whatever. So I haven't even really made that many beats recently. But back when I was making a lot more beats, I was also had a lot of experience as an engineer, and sometimes I might get compliments like, "Hey, these beats sound or the songs like sound mixed really really well." And what I'd say most, and they'd be like, "What? What's all the You must have some crazy EQ and compression, like all kinds of crazy effects." And it's like, yeah, I have a little bit of that, but it's mostly just sound selection. Just get the sounds right in the first place, and then you don't need to uh, put a whole bunch of effects on it. And even with all the effects, it's like you said, you put as much spices and stuff on there. If like that main ingredient isn't good, it's never gonna be great. And I really like that food analogy too. That's a great analogy. And then I think to tie it together too, like you were saying, okay, if there's that kick that's got a bunch of sub in it, that might sound amazing, but then if you also want to have an 808 that's filling up that space, now it's not going to sound amazing. So you could, even using the food analogy, you might have these two great ingredients, like maybe it's like ice cream and sushi or whatever, and it's like those are both great, but they're not going to work together. So yeah, keeping the food analogy going.
Exactly. I love that reference too, because ice cream's awesome, sushi's awesome. They're not awesome together. Yeah.
Probably, I've never tried it, but probably not.
Yeah, exactly. And food is such like a great, because one, it's really relatable. We've all eaten something sometime in our life, so we can all relate to that. But in the same realm, it's mixing and sound selection is a lot like it. There's a lot of things that are similar in that approach of, this and that. Cause like it always reminds me of I hear a lot of chefs say, you have a good steak when someone doesn't need to pour A1 steak sauce on it, right? That's how you know that you got a good steak. For me, I like the taste of A1 steak sauce, but that's just more of a preference. So it would be, again, like the steak is really good, but maybe somebody prefers to add some distortion A1 steak sauce, right? It doesn't need distortion, it doesn't need delay or, whatever, but it's a little ear candy. It's a little something on top too. And it's also, again, just continuing on with this. Let's say that, someone brings out some mashed potatoes, right? You got your parsley on it, and they're subtle with it, right? You've ever gone to a restaurant and there's like a little sprig of parsley on the mashed potato. It's a nice
Sure.
little touch, right? It doesn't need to be there, but it helps. But imagine if they were to just put a whole pile of parsley on that mashed potatoes and now you can't see it. It's too much, right? So sometimes also when you do add those little subtle things, the chorus effects, the flanger, maybe sometimes just be more subtle with it. Again, with the parsley, maybe just a sprig of it. Don't pile it on, because we still want to enjoy the mashed potatoes. We don't want it covered up.
Bro, this podcast has never made me so hungry.
I know.
No, I really think it's a great analogy. You could probably do a whole course that's like cooking, the cooking analogy for mixing or something.
It's in my notes, man, to do a tutorial on how mixing is like making a soup. It's in there. I just haven't, it's been in my notes for like a year, but I'm like, that's going to be a long video. So I got to like do a day where I got nothing going on, because it's going to take a while.
I like it. You know what would be dope, and just to add to the level of difficulty is make it like cook up a beat, but then like make the soup like at the same. You're like in the kitchen, but you got or you know what I mean. That would be crazy.
You know that this drum machine back there is my portable one, so it could be done. And I do got a MacBook too, so I in a sense I could do it.
Hey, it'd be something unique. I never seen it.
Yeah, that's true. I have not seen that yet. I think both of them because I know my multitasking skills. I think both of them would suffer. I think the soup and the beat would be bad. I can make a good soup. I can make a good beat. I think if I did them both at the same time, we would see that realistic is not a good multitask.
Hey, as long as the video comes out good, that's really all that matters.
Yeah, for sure. And luckily, I do have a decent quality camera, so decent quality will be good.
Man, this has been great. I guess just last thing before we wrap it up here, if you just let the people know all the best places to find you. Let us know if there's whatever you're excited about coming up, and if you did have any other parting words of wisdom or anything else you want to wrap up with, any combination of those things.
Well, the main place to find like everything that we do is at soundoracle.net because you'll be able to find our tutorials there, our blogs. We always do a lot of cool blogs of not only, things like how to mix your 808 or how to get sync placements, but then we also do little things of like top 10, interfaces for music producers or top 10 microphones under 800 bucks. So there's always these resources under there that you'll find. You'll obviously find the sound kits and the courses in there as well. So that's like the easiest place to like find all of our useful information. As far as if you want to follow us on social media, Oracle's everywhere at Sound Oracle. I'm everywhere at Realistic Productions. Our biggest platforms that we focus that we're, have the most content on is Instagram and YouTube. So if you're looking for a lot of our content, it's going to be between those two platforms and Pinterest. That's kind of a weird one that not a lot of people know about, but that's Pinterest is kind of a cheat code, man. If you're looking to ramp up your SEO, your on Google, like Pinterest is the way to go. It'll ramp that up quick within like a month or two. It's crazy.
Mm,
I had
okay.
signed not to get off track, but I had signed up for it, and within like 3 months, I had like over like a million, uh, a an audience of a million people per month within a few months, and I wasn't even trying. I was just
Wow.
posting like the same stuff I post on Instagram with my tips and tricks. I was just posting on Pinterest, and it went off. But it does help your Google ranking. So if you're trying to get up in the your search engine when people search for whatever you do, Pinterest will definitely help move that up. So that's kind of a gem in there. But yeah, those three platforms: Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube. The big thing too that I really think people should check out is we have two online mixing courses: the art of beat mixing, the art of vocal mixing. Um, both of them are filled with hours worth of content, multiple videos, and they're all like short videos that are easy to digest. So you don't have to sit through like an hour long video if there's just one certain information you want to watch. Like, for instance, how a compressor works. We have a video on just how the attack time works instead of watching a 30-minute video and having to skip through, like, where's the attack time? So we had broken that up into little things like that, and people really love it. You had helped Oracle too with the interface and that, or given suggestions on the interface. So the interface turned out really beautiful too. I think it's really intuitive. So that's also on soundoracle.net, but it's a lot of useful information if people want to get better at mixing their vocals and mixing their beats.
Love it. Man, this was awesome. Appreciate you taking the time. Looking forward to chatting again soon.
Yep, I appreciate your time too, man. Appreciate it.